Okay, here's an example of adding or subtracting algebraic fractions, and this will be actually a subtraction problem because it's probably one of the more challenging type, because you have to be careful with leading negative signs on polynomials, so we'll talk about that shortly. So if we want to subtract these two fractions, we always have to find a least common denominator. Whether we're adding or subtracting, we have to have a least common denominator, and then we'll add the numerators and put them over the common denominator. So we look at these two denominators, and they're trinomials, and they don't seem to have anything in common. They're not, I mean, they don't look the same, so I could multiply this trinomial times that trinomial, and I would have a common denominator, but it might not be the least, because we may have some common factors, so we have to factor. So factor first. So factor the denominator so you can check for common factors, because in this form we can't really see what's going on. So these are both simple trinomials, so the numerator is going to stay the same. And I know this would be a product of two binomials, x and x, and I analyze my signs. This tells me these two signs are different. This tells me the sign of the largest, so it's going to be positive, negative. I multiply to give 2 and differ by 1. There's only one way you can get 2, and that's 2 times 1, so that's not too hard to factor. Then we've got minus, and then we've got x plus 2. And again, this is another simple trinomial. This tells me these signs are the same, and if they're the same, this tells me what they are. So this tells me these two signs are the same. This tells me they're both negative. And again, 2 and 1 will work. All right, so now we've got it in factored form. So identify the least common denominator and write it down so you don't forget. And it's got to be the smallest, that's why we say the least, expression that both of these denominators will fit into, or will divide into evenly. So I'm going to build the LCD, and I'll use these two factors because the smallest that these two will go into will be both those two. So it's going to be x plus 2 times x minus 1. And you can see if we divide x plus 2 times x minus 1 and x plus 2 times x minus 1, we get 1, so it fits in there. Okay? Now does x minus 2 times x minus 1 divide into there? Well, the x minus 1 is there, but the x minus 2 doesn't fit. So we need to add that factor. So this is x minus 2. And you can see that x minus 2 times x minus 1 divides in there into this three-factor expression, x plus 2 times. And if we divide x plus 2 times x minus 1, it goes into this expression, x minus 2 times. Okay, so there's my LCD. So once I've got that, I've got to adjust these so I have to have a least common denominator in both. So I've got x minus 2 all over x plus 2 times x minus 1 minus x plus 2 all over x minus 2 times x minus 1. And in order to have the least common denominator, what am I missing here? Well, I'm missing a x minus 2, so I've got to put x minus 2 in the bottom. But what I do to the bottom, I've got to do to the top, so I'll put x minus 2 in the top. X minus 2 over x minus 2 is just 1, so I'm just multiplying by 1. That's not going to change the value. But now I've adjusted my denominator, so I've got the LCD there. The x minus 2, x minus 1, x plus 2. X plus 2, x minus 1, x minus 2, right there. Same idea, I've got to adjust this, so what am I missing? I've got an x minus 2 and an x minus 1, so I need an x plus 2. So what I do to the bottom, I've got to do to the top. And now I've got both fractions over the least common denominator. Now I can put them all over the least common denominator. So need a big fraction bar for that. Or you can simplify them first on the top, whatever your choice is. I'll just put them all over the LCD. So I've got x minus 2 times x minus 2, and this is going to be negative x plus 2 times x plus 2 all over my LCD, which is going to be x plus 2 times x minus 1 times x minus 2. All right, now we can simplify these, so we'll have to multiply these out and see if we can combine any like terms. So I'll work that out on the top. Give myself a little space here. And if I multiply these, x times x is x squared, so we'll just FOIL. X squared minus 2x and negative 2x. Now we can combine these. The outside terms and the inside terms will simplify. A negative 2x and a negative 2x is a negative 4x. And a negative 2 times a negative 2 is a positive 4. Minus. Now be careful because we have a negative sign preceding this. So we have to put a little safety bracket there so we don't forget that every term is preceded by that negative sign. So please do this when you have a minus or negative. Now we'll multiply this. X times x is x squared. And then x times 2 is 2x plus 2x is 4x. And 2 times 2 is 4 plus 4. Okay. Now that's all over the LCD, so instead of writing it out, I'll just write LCD for right now, okay? Because we know what the LCD is. The LCD is these three factors, and it saves a little bit, these three factors over here. So it saves a little bit of time just to write it out like that while we're simplifying the top, because sometimes it takes a couple steps to simplify the top. Okay. So now I'll remove this parenthesis, so I've got x squared minus 4x plus 4, and that's going to be negative x squared, negative 4x, and negative 4. See, that negative sign will affect every term that it precedes. And again, I'll just write LCD here until I simplify. And now what's x squared minus x squared? 0. What's negative 4x and negative 4x? That's negative 8x. And what's 4 minus 4? 0. So now we're done. And we can write out now the LCD. X plus 2. X minus 1. X minus 2. And there's your answer. Now this is one of the more difficult problems. That's why I picked it as an example. But again, in each case, you always have to identify the LCD, and it's probably a good practice too, just write it down once you identify it so you make sure you do your matchings correct. Okay? Hope that helps.